Alright, so this video is going to focus on segment and angle addition postulates. Let's go ahead and get started. The directions say, for each, mark your diagram with all given information and then write an equation. Do not attempt to solve any problem without beginning with an equation. Alright, very good directions. So let's go ahead and follow them and move on to number 1. Number 1 says, in the figure above, the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B equals 64 degrees. What is the measure of angle A? Alright, so the first bit of information they tell us is that the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B equals 64 degrees. Now, when I look at A and B, I notice that they're vertical angles. And since they're vertical angles, they're most likely going to be congruent to one another. So if A plus B has to equal 64 degrees, then that means A must be equal to 32 degrees. B must also be equal to 32 degrees. And that's how we get our 64 degrees. So this is 32 degrees. Now if I want to find the measure of angle D or the measure of angle C, which are also a pair of vertical degrees, what I know is that B and D are a linear pair, D and A are a linear pair, A and C are a linear pair, and B and C are also a linear pair. And if you know the definition of linear pair, a linear pair must add up to 180 degrees. So I'm just going to pick A and D, this set of linear pair. Now, if A is equal to 32 degrees, and we don't know the measure of angle D, we do know that a linear pair has to add up to 180 degrees. To solve this equation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 32 from both sides. This goes away, and we're left with the measure of angle D, which after we subtract, 10 minus 2 is 8, 7 minus 3 is 4, 148. So the measure of angle D is 148 degrees. So if D is 148 degrees, then C also has to be equal to 148 degrees. Okay. Number 2. In the figure below, line segment AB is equal to 5, BC is equal to negative 3x, and AC is equal to 23. So again, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to label my diagram. So they tell us that AB is equal to 5. So AB, that has to equal 5. They also tell us that line segment BC is equal to negative 3x. Now, they've already labeled negative 3x, but since it's so small, I'm going to go ahead and write it again. Okay? And the last thing they tell us is that line segment AC is equal to 23 degrees. So A to C is equal to 23. I'm sorry, not 23 degrees, just 23. Alright, so if this AB is equal to 5, and BC is equal to negative 3x, then these two together, when added, must equal 23. So I'm going to set up that equation. 5 plus negative 3x is equal to 23. Now to solve this equation, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. I'm left with negative 3x is equal to 18. And when I divide both sides by negative 3, I'm left with x is equal to negative 6. Okay, question number 3. In the figure below, B is the midpoint of AC, line segment AC. AB is equal to x over 2, and BC is equal to 15. So again, take this information, label your diagram. The first bit of information is that B is the midpoint of AC. So I'm going to go ahead and label B as the midpoint. And by the definition of midpoint, I know that a midpoint cuts a line segment in half. So that means AB has to be congruent to BC. Okay, so with that being the case, if x over 2 has to be equal to 15 by the definition of congruent segments, the way I'm going to solve this equation is I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And I'm left with the fact that x is equal to 30. Alright, last question, number 4. In the figure above, the angle BCD and angle DCA are supplementary. What is the value of x? So supplementary, anytime you see the word supplement or supplementary, you need to think of the 180 degrees. And if you forget the difference between supplementary and complementary, which one's 180 and which one's 90, supplementary begins with the letter S, so you can turn the S into an 8 for 180 degrees. All right, so they told us that angle BCD plus angle DCA is supplementary, and by the definition of supplementary, we know they equal 180 degrees. So BCD is right here, and they tell us that that is equal to 3x minus 5, and DCA is right here, and that they say that that's equal to x minus 1. And again, all of that has to equal 180 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring it down here, just because I know I'm going to run out of space if I begin to try to solve it. Alright, the first thing I want to do is I want to simplify this. So I get, if I add 3x plus x, I'm going to get 4x. And if I add negative 5 plus negative 1, I'm going to get negative 6, or minus 6. Okay, first step in solving this is I'm going to add 6 to both sides. I'm left with 4x equals 186. Next, I need to divide both sides by 4. I got to do some division on the side, some side work. Four goes into 26 6 times for 24. Remainder 2. And we get 4 goes into 25 times. So x is equal to 46 5/10. I hope this has helped you out, and thanks for watching. See you in class.